What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, talking today about 2023 because the year is finally wrapping up and it's time to select the best and the worst games. Now, I will admit, this year is incredibly difficult for me to make selections because there was just so much goodness. A lot of people online are even saying this might be the best year ever for video games. I mean, we had crazy RPGs, online experiences that you could play for hundreds of hours, tiny indie hidden gems. I mean, everything across the industry was firing on all cylinders. Like, just actually fathom the amount of 10 out of 10 scores you saw for games in the last 12 months. Well, now I have to do the impossible. I have to pick 10 games that are truly the best in my opinion. But I'm going to cheat a bit. I'm going to pick the 10 best games of the year, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to do 5 honorable mentions. 5 extra games that still are incredibly fantastic, but in a year this packed, even the 9 out of 10s are kind of falling through the cracks. But let's discuss. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. But now, let's dive in. Number 10. Dead Space Remake. There has been a tremendous amount of debates and discussion this year about the idea of remakes and remasters. How much can you change or add to the game to make it a completely new experience? And Dead Space Remake, this game really freaking got under my skin because at the start, it seems like a shot-for-shot reconstruction of the original. Same style of art, but with much better graphics, the same hallways, the same jump scares, but suddenly, the deeper you dig, the more you begin to discover its secrets. New side quests, extra dialogue, new audio logs, and of course, better than that, way improved controls. This game is completely different, but you can't tell just at a surface glance. You actually have to figure it out, and I love that about it. I ended up platinuming this on PlayStation 5, doing 5 separate playthroughs, maxing out every gun, seeing every corner of the Ishimura, and on top of that, I really love the fact that it feels scarier, more beautiful, and of course, even more visceral than the original, which was already legendary. Number 9. Super Mario Wonder. Okay, so I gotta admit that when I initially started playing this game, I was kind of coming at it as a hater. I mean, not to be overly rude or close-minded, but typically I don't like 2D Marios that much. I definitely enjoy the big 3D open-world collectathon style Mario games like Mario 64, Sunshine, and of course Mario Odyssey, but Mario Wonder is a AAA experience in a tinier package. This has 150 stages, but what instantly won me over was just the fact that it takes place in such a different location. Instead of being in the typical Mushroom Kingdom, we're in the Flower Kingdom, and with it, it brings a completely different vibe. New power-ups, completely new enemies. The music is even very different, and there's music-style stages. There's random challenges. I like the fact that Mario Wonder is a game that when you glance at it, it's not going to click. It's one of those games that you actually need to pick up the controller to do some jumps and just say, hey, what are they trying to achieve? I feel like I've still not fully grasped everything in this because I haven't done every single stage yet, but even after 20 hours, Mario Wonder is the kind of game that I feel like is going to go in the history books as one of the best 2D games ever made by Nintendo since the original Super Mario back on the SNES. Number 8. Armored Core 6. The unquestionable winner of last year's Game of the Year was obviously Elden Ring, a game that managed to mix the difficulty of Dark Souls with a jaw-droppingly large open-world experience, a game that had side dungeons and bosses so big they would explode off the screen. And so I know a lot of people were curious to try Armored Core after playing Elden Ring. It opened a lot of people's eyes to the genius of From Software. So going into this, I expected the game to be incredibly good because I've played previous Armored Cores, but I didn't expect it to be this good. This game is incredibly difficult. I just want to throw that out there. If you're planning on coming in here because it looks graphically cool and you're like, hey, I want to pop some robots, it's not really a smooth journey, but that's part of its purpose. Armored Core 6 has us going to a planet called Rubicon that's completely burnt out. People are here though. Different companies have hired mech pilots to battle over resources. And as you arrive on the planet, you begin to care about these characters, these conflicts, these cutscenes, because at the heart of it, there is this understandable, desperate struggle to just scrape together a living. I mean, if somebody told me, hey, we need mech pilots, they pay you $1,000 an hour, but there's a 40% chance you're going to get blown up, I'd probably still take the job. Armored Core 6 is the kind of game that kills you constantly, but it still feels rewarding because even as you die, you're learning, you're adapting, you're creating those skills to dodge those deadly blows on your next attempt. This game may be tough, but at the end of it, it's definitely worth the journey. Number 7. Octopath Traveler 2. This entry has got to be the most overlooked masterpiece of the entire year. I feel like I'm going crazy because so few people are actually talking about it, and it's completely incredible. This is a classic turn-based style RPG, but it's also so much more than that. I love this game because it's cool in all of its different branching paths. There are 8 separate protagonists that each have their own very different motivations, whether it is overthrowing an evil king, trying to kill the person that destroyed your family, or just a gunslinger that's trying to get enough cash to buy back his hometown that's been stolen. What's so incredible about this game is that each individual character feels like their own protagonist. They have their own cutscenes, they have their own interactions, they have their own styles of magic and mayhem, and all of it is just so brilliantly tailored. I mean, it feels like when you're putting together like a 5,000 piece puzzle and you finally begin to see that picture underneath it. But also on top of that, it's a classic turn-based RPG. There are people that have been screaming from the rooftops about how they want more classic turn-based RPGs to come back. And here we have maybe one of the greatest ones ever, actually cracking through enemy defenses, blasting people with incredibly visually impressive magic, listening to the incredibly good music. This is exactly what retro RPG fans have been begging for. It has finally arrived. So if you haven't played it, please, I'm literally on my hands and knees, play Octopath Traveler 2. It's going to blow your mind. You don't need the first game. It is absolutely exactly what we needed. Number 6. Final Fantasy XVI. I really respect when a game developer attempts something completely different, so far outside their comfort zone that they end up having to hire new developers, new artists, new team members to actually push things outside the box. Final Fantasy XVI is a huge departure for Square Enix, but at the same time, I feel like it perfectly instills the original idea of Final Fantasy. This has always been a franchise that's about trying new things, different combat, different gameplay, different talent trees in every single entry, and that's really what they accomplished in 16. This game is grand in scale, having clashing kingdoms and an infinite blight that's slowly absorbing the life of the entire planet. And I love the fact that, honestly, it plays so good. They hired the combat director from freaking Devil May Cry to invent a new way to play Final Fantasy. And let me tell you, while you're dishing out combos and counting cooldowns and managing to just keep that combat rolling, it feels incredible. This is one of those games where not a single fight ever feels wasted. Every second on screen, whether it is huge cutscenes or tiny minor quests or just helping somebody out in the countryside, all of it feels relevant. All of it feels important. And even now, after having played almost 80 hours of it, I honestly kind of want to go back and go through it again just so I have an excuse to see all the winding, twisting paths that Clive and his friends go on. This story is dark at times, it's bleak at times, but damn, is it just beautiful. Square Enix, keep it up. Number 5. Resident Evil 4 Remake. The creators over at Capcom have been going absolutely ballistic the last couple years, giving us games like Devil May Cry 5, Street Fighter 6, obviously the Resident Evil remakes, and Monster Hunter. But even among all the greatness that they have been crafting, Resident Evil 4, it feels like something that's going to go down in the history books. Now, if you've never played a Resident Evil, I feel like at times casual fans are a bit intimidated because they are spooky. They are about going bump in the night. And this remake is way scarier than the original. But that's part of why I just think it's such a cool idea, even on paper. Each of the remakes that we've gotten now with 2, 3, and now 4 have been very faithful retellings of the original plots. In this one, we're playing as Leon Kennedy trying to save the president's daughter who's been kidnapped by a cult. But what's extra cool about that is that it just plays so good. Now that they've made the controls better, the aiming sharper, the guns have a lot more impact, they've also invented new ways to fight these bosses. I just think this is just such an impressive testament of redoing art, because as the developers, I'm sure this was a struggle to go back and make one of the best games ever. The original Resident Evil 4 is considered to be truly one of the best games ever, and they came back and made it even more fun. I platinumed this. I actually did. I think I did 11 separate playthroughs. They even added a mercenaries mode for free later on, so now you could just endlessly kill Las Plagas bad guys. This game had so many twists and added elements and cool surprises that it's still just so cool to me that they managed to nail it. Resident Evil 4 is a game that makes me incredibly excited for whatever Capcom does next. I hope it's a Code Veronica remake, but I'd take RE5. Just give me a lot more Resident Evil. Number 4. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. The Nintendo Switch seems like it's about to die. It definitely has that vibe that the next successor, the next Nintendo console, is probably about to be released. And so it does have that idea that Nintendo tried to make one last incredibly big game to impress all of us. And they did it. Tears of the Kingdom is a game you could pretty much play forever. We're playing as Link investigating the disappearance of Zelda, and during the course of this, we have to get new powers. We can now use special fusing skills to make rock hammers, to solve puzzles, to make rocket skateboards or mechs or anything you can possibly imagine. But the best part of Tears of the Kingdom for me was the fact that it has 3 separate maps. A sky map, huge floating dungeons and weird bosses up in the sky, literally, that you can fly up to. Then, of course, there's the ground area, which is like a remixed version of the map we had in Breath of the Wild. And then there's the underneath. There's this huge dark area called the Depths, which is like a Dark Souls style, incredibly tough area where getting hit can permanently damage you with a thing called the Gloom. Each different flavor of Zelda that's captured in this is so incredibly addictive. I have multiple friends who have put hundreds, if not thousands of hours into this game. And you're probably asking, how is that even possible? It's because every square inch is a puzzle, is a secret, is a new discovery. And that's just so cool to me. This is the kind of game that's not about beating it. It's about absorbing it. It is about existing as Link in the Tears of the Kingdom. This game, seriously, I have gone back and done 2 separate playthroughs of it, both of which I think were about 60 hours long, and even now, I feel like I've barely played it. This has such a cool layer of effort in every single inch of it that I cannot freaking stop loving. Number 3. SpiderMan II. Now, I have a feeling that certain people in the comment section are not exactly going to be thrilled that I'm putting this game so high up on the list. But to me, I feel like it definitely earns its spot, mostly because I really appreciated the story of Spider-Man 2 for really highlighting the difficulties of being a superhero. In this age where we have so many different styles of cape flicks, from Spider-Man and the Flash and Batman and everybody else, a lot of times they just highlight a personal struggle of, oh, I need to defeat the next big boss, or oh, I've got to go through time and try and punch my mom in the stomach so I don't get born and have all those bad birthday parties. But no, Spider-Man 2 actually focuses on a singular topic, which is just the personal price they pay to save New York City. Both Miles and Peter Parker have actual in-depth discussions about what they have to give up, how they can date, where they can go, what kind of jobs they can work. And of course, beyond even that, the gameplay is fantastic. The almost rhythm-style punching of chaining together hits, combos, finishers, and then trying to unleash your new special attacks, whether they are electricity or big, huge gadgets and zip lines. I just feel like Spider-Man 2, in my mind, is such a complete package. Of course, I platinumed it because I like playing a bunch of Spider-Man games, but while going through this and truly finishing off the map, I began to reflect upon the idea of Spider-Man, to actually think, will there ever be a conclusion? Is Insomniac going to actually retire Peter Parker or Miles Morales at some point? It's like the fact that I care about the well-being of these fictional characters just shows a unique amount of heart that they've managed to instill in this. Spider-Man 2 is not the kind of game that you can just watch a playthrough of on YouTube. You really need to see it, to feel it, to get hit by those waves of emotion. And even here, a month later, after having battled against Kraven the Hunter and Venom, I'm still actually just chewing on the concepts, the idea of the Spider-Man struggle. And that to me is badass. Number 2. Allan Wake 2. Let me begin this entry with an important question, which is this. What is it that makes a game scary? Like, actually consider that. Is it big monsters or jump scares, or is it trying to constantly scrounge together ammunition for an impossible opponent? I think it's all of that, but Allan Wake 2 is a truly terrifying experience because it's just so cerebral. There's 2 separate protagonists, Saga Anderson and of course the titular Allan Wake, and they're each going through their own very different horrifying journeys. Allan Wake is in the dark place, a pocket dimension of literal nightmares, battling against shadows, cracking puzzles, trying to rewrite reality and maybe achieve some style of freedom. His fear in this game is practically a drowning omnipresence that is something you truly, truly cannot comprehend until you see it. Whereas when it comes to Saga, her fear is both much more literal because she's dealing with monsters in the actual world, fighting against crazy people that's minds have been taken by the darkness, basically weird, creepy demon zombies. But then on top of that, there's this amazing emotional fear. that maybe she's going to lose herself in reality? Is the writing of Allan Wake's book going to unmake her daughter? Is she going to lose her loved ones? Like, I really can't stop just pondering all the different elements of terror that they've put into this. It's just a game that manages to be so riveting, so impressive, so incredibly diverse in how it accomplishes its fears. And on top of that, of course, it's just damn fun to play, reloading a shotgun and blasting a Taken in the face right as their invincibility shield, the shadows get pushed off. It feels great. Shoving a flare down the throat of one of these zombies that's trying to just push you into a dark closet. Like, every single hit, every headshot, every next blast feels good. On top of the fact that it's just epic when you finally finish it. Allan Wake 2, I of course platinumed it. I actually finished it. I got the final trophy on Halloween night. It was so spooky from the beginning to the end. If I had a time machine, I'd probably just see what the heck the next game's going to be, whether it is Control 2 from Remedy or Allan Wake 3. No matter what, I want to sit down and play that now. Number 1. Baldurs Gate 3. You know, oftentimes when I'm doing my best to compare the greatest games of a particular year, you're just holding it up in contrast to other recent releases. Is this a good RPG compared to other RPGs? Does it have the depth of other people's character customizers and stuff like that? But Baldur's Gate 3, it's a game that's difficult to even compare because it is just 10 years in tech ahead of everybody else. This is not only the best game of 2023, I think this might be the best game of the last decade, and maybe even the next decade. This is essentially digital Dungeons and Dragons, and comes with the amount of depth that conveys. You make your own custom character, whether it is a barbarian, or a warlock, or somebody that's going to be jamming out on cool tunes as a bard, and then you go on your own completely custom quest. You end up getting a chance to slay goblins, or become friends with them, help the druids, or burn their town down, go to the Underdark and try and battle against dark elves and slavers, or actually go to the far reaches of the earth. Every part of my first 220-hour playthrough is something I will never forget. I've played this game co-op with friends, I've played it by myself, and every time I'm playing it, I'm just totally blown away that every option is accounted for. I've had times where I walked through a random hole in the wall and started interrogating a cat about random secrets of the castle, and he showed me treasure chests. Or there's a particular boss that has some secret weakness orb that I didn't discover until my second playthrough. Every part of this game truly defies the imagination. I don't know how we're ever going to get a game of this scope again. This is lightning in the bottle. Even if you don't like turn-based combat or it seems like it's too slow, I am just saying give it a shot. Baldur's Gate 3 is worth every single penny. I paid $60 for this, and you know what? I'd pay an extra $80 or $100. It is a kind of game I just want to throw money at it so that whenever we eventually get a Baldur's Gate 4, it's going to be 500 hours per playthrough. This game is freaking perfect. So that's why I am awarding it my pick as the best game of 2023. That was a heck of a journey, right? I mean, that's the 10 best games of the year, but that doesn't really even cover how good this year has been. So let's talk about 5 more. First up, we have Street Fighter VI. I loved this game because it was something that felt like it was approachable to newcomers. It was a fighting game that had deep, complex combos and counters and special attacks, but it also allowed you to learn, to experiment, to be taught how to be good at it. And on top of that, the cool new story mode was incredibly freaking fun. I cannot praise that enough. But next up, we got to talk about Super Mario RPG, because in a year of packed remakes, it's difficult not to overlook certain aspects of them. But I actually like that Mario RPG is just such an authentic remaster, basically. It's got new art, it's got some extra little hidden things like new boss stuff, but other than that, it is just the best retro, weird, wonky experience from decades ago brought back. I played through this game in pretty much one 11-hour sitting, and while beating it, I really just kind of appreciated the fact that it has such a cool 90s passion to it. It's just, hey, here's those games from retro year with the same cringe jokes and the same goofiness. That's cool to me. Not every remake needs to try and reinvent the universe. Sometimes we just want something that can stick to what made the old ones good. Okay, so next up is Remnant II. This is essentially co-op Dark Souls with guns. It's got stamina meters, it's got bosses with multiple phases, it's got a very long, winding sense of progression, but more than that, it's just a blast to play. It is a randomized game. You're going to get different loot, different quests, different adventures, different maps, all as you're jumping from universe to universe. I really wanted to do a deep dive review on Remnant, but I've just been so busy for this year, I haven't had a chance to talk about it. I beat the game. I beat the DLC. I really, really liked it. And me and my roommate are still constantly trying to theory craft new runs, new builds, new ways to just conquer this incredibly fun game. But speaking of just entertaining on its face value, Final Fantasy Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. All right, don't laugh at me. We're just going to hit this real quick. It's a rhythm game, but based on a bunch of Final Fantasy music. It's got like 600 tracks. I have played 45 hours of this. This may not look deep, but there's cool like mechanics of trying to time the beats and making your party so you can level them up and teach them different magic. There's all these subquests and extra missions for beating a quest using particular people or no magic or just physical attacks. Is it a bit cheesy? Yeah, but as a celebration of Final Fantasy, they absolutely nailed it. Now, the last honorable mention is going to be Sea of Stars. This is an indie RPG that has so much incredibly cool, well, how do I even phrase this? It feels like a sequel to Chrono Trigger. It has that essence of extra care, time, and attention that a lot of AAA games completely lack. You can tell every little bit of art, of music, of casting, of boss design, every cheesy joke said by the characters, it has a point. I really think Sea of Stars, it got a lot of credit, a lot of people praised it, but it's often overlooked. Part of the reason I have to put this in here is because, quite frankly, of all the games out here that I feel like are a hidden gem, 2023 is probably going to be remembered for having so much stuff you can't play everything. But if you have the time, check out Sea of Stars, check out all of these games. This has been 15 separate experiences that personally I loved the most. But next up, we're going to be talking about the worst games of the year. So be sure to watch that video next. If you enjoyed this one though, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. This video is taking like 5 hours to film, I swear to God. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.